The continuation of Chapter 8 would include the other types of hospitals. So we have the teaching hospitals. There are about 400 teaching hospitals in America, and the main characteristics of these are that they do medical training for every type of medical care provider, and they are responsible for research. So they also have the opportunity to have some additional reimbursement from Medicare. They have a broad and complex scope of services. They do tertiary care as well as primary and secondary care. And many are located in economically depressed areas, which is a little concerning, isn't it? They are considered charity hospitals and do about half of their care in for people who cannot afford it. Then we have affiliated or church affiliated hospitals. The Catholic Sisters first established these types of hospitals, and they still go on. They're often general hospitals providing, the general care that we talked about prior. And then we have osteopathic hospitals. This is the final type of hospital that we have, and these also are community general hospitals, but they, are not very efficient. They're less efficient than the other hospitals, and many have closed because of their processes and the way in which they do things. So when you get to this next part, you want to start to take a look at, when we're on a hospital, how does it run, what happens, who manages them, and who's in charge. And so when we start to take a look at some of these, you would take a look at the different types of hospitals, and sometimes the way in which they're managed is the way in which they're classified. So it's interesting to take a look at that. Board of trustees, usually the people who are paying some money into it, rich doctors, other lawyers, government officials, different people like that. There is a chief executive officer. That can be a business person, that can be a surgeon, that can be a medical professional. And then, of course, the medical staff also sometimes runs hospitals. So that's important to keep in mind. The hospital that you would want to go to, you would want one that was an accredited hospital that required licensure and certification for its professionals. And so state governments oversee the licensure of healthcare facilities. They send in people to do accreditation reports, make sure that people are clean, make sure areas are clean, make sure the hospital is running as standards. They also certify which hospitals can participate in Medicare and Medicaid programs, and that standards issue that I already talked about. Hospitals also have a recognition system, so obviously there can be recognitions for several different things. Though the recognition system that your textbook talks about is the magnet recognition system, and this system here is the designation would be conferred by the American Nursing Credentialing Center. They would recognize quality, nursing excellence, any type of innovation in professional nursing practices, different changes and things that may come out of your hospital by the nurse. And it's an organizational environment that helps attract and retain well-qualified nurses. So we would want hospitals who have that, because then we know that the nursing staff is highly qualified. The next issue that's important to finish or round out our chapter are the ethical and legal issues for inpatient care. And so first and foremost, when we start to talk about the Joint Commission requires that an accredited institution have mechanisms in place that allow the patients, their families, and the employees to obtain resolution to any type of ethical issue that may arise based from conflict of interest to improper practice. And so the principles of ethics simply say that respect for others has 4 elements: autonomy, truth-telling, confidentiality, and fidelity. So this is what the principles of ethics are based off of. And so they want fairness and equality, non-discrimination. They want to do no harm, and the benefits should exceed any potential harm. So we talk about the risk-benefit ratio. So these are some things. The key is that we want to alleviate any suffering. When we take a look at some of the legal rights that go on with this, we want to make sure that the patient has the right to refuse any treatment. And that was the Self-Determination Act in 1990. And so many hospitals and other inpatient institutions have developed what is referred to as the Patient Bill of Rights. This is the document that reflects the law stating that confidentiality and consent are mission critical. So we have some HIPAA rules and we have some things that came out of this. When we get to the informed consent, that means that I have to be told what the risks are and if I really want this type of treatment. I have the right to obtain all the information based off of the diagnosis, the treatment, and the prognosis, so I can take it to somebody else and get a second opinion. And the patient care has to be centered on the patient. So the culture promotes patient involvement, respects their preferences and their needs for more information, and is patient with their questions. We have advanced directives, do not resuscitate orders, also known as DNRs, where patients have already determined that they don't want to be resuscitated. We have the living will, and we have the durable power of attorney. And so those are some important things that we want to take into consideration. And then we want to make sure that there are mechanisms in place for the ethical decision making. And so there's our ethics committees, there's a moral agent, and there are checks and balances to ensure that that happens properly. So this rounds out our chapter 8. Thanks so much for your attention, and I look forward to your synthesized and analyzed answers to this chapter's questions. Have a great day.